we're going to be looking at shape for the next sequence of lessons, and we're going to start with remembering some of the shapes you have met in Year 2 and Year 1. So name these along with me. What is this shape? Well done if you said square. What is this shape? It is an oblong. Now, some of you will have said rectangle, and you are right, it is a rectangle, but so is this. A rectangle is any shape that has 4 sides and 4 of these little angles here that look like the corner of a book. Okay, and we'll talk more about these angles a little bit later on. But a square is a rectangle that has 4 equal length sides, and an oblong is a rectangle that has 2 sets of different length sides. Okay, so you can say it's a rectangle, but this is also a rectangle, so it's more specific to say this is an oblong. This is a triangle. This is a, I'll give you a second to count the sides, pentagon. Pent meaning 5. This is a, well done if you said hexagon. This is a, now if you look over here, you'll see it's half a circle, and we call it a semicircle. Semi means half. This one, trickier one, give you a moment. This is a parallelogram. Okay, and it's called a parallelogram because these lines run parallel to each other. So there's 2 sets of parallel lines here, one set here and another set here. They are slanted, so you don't get those bookend corners we talked about earlier. Those angles here, they're slightly different, but the lines are parallel, which means that they do not meet. Okay, so this line over here, even if you kept drawing it forever and ever and ever and ever, it would never meet this line here. They would never get any closer because they are entirely straight and they're parallel to each other. This is a, I'll give you a second to count the sides. Octagon. Okay, an octagon has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sides. Like an octopus has 8 legs. Okay, oct meaning 8. Count the sides. What do you think it is? It is a heptagon. It has 7 sides. Count the sides on this one. What do you think it is? It is a decagon. There are 10 sides. Okay, dec meaning 10. If you have a decade, that is 10 years. A decagon has 10 sides. Okay. Today we are understanding what is meant by right angle. We want to know what a right angle is, and what you will need to be able to do to succeed in this lesson. Well, by the end of this lesson, I'm expecting you to be able to identify a right angle, which means you will be able to tell me which angles are right angles if I show you a selection of them. You're going to recognise that 2 right angles make half a turn, and 3 make 3/4 of a turn, 4 make a complete turn, and we'll look at that later on, so don't worry if you don't know what I'm on about yet. And finally, we're going to identify whether angles are greater than, which means bigger than, or less than, smaller than, a right angle. So, what is an angle? There are 2 types of angle. Okay, an angle can be a property of a shape, like a corner or an edge is a property of a shape, and a description of a turn. So we'll look at the property of a shape first. This is my shape, it's a triangle, and you can see some of the properties of my shape. We have 3 edges or sides to my shape here, and we have 3 vertices or corners here. Now it says vertex here. A vertex is 1 corner. If you have more than one, it's a vertices. And for the purposes of year 3, we can use these words interchangeably. And over here we can see angles. Now an angle is formed when you have 2 edges that meet, and where they meet here is an angle, and it is marked off here by this little blue line. And you have 3 angles inside the triangle and 3 angles outside the triangle. Okay, and I've just drawn those on for you. Apologies for the shaky drawings. I didn't have a mouse. Okay, so that's a property of a shape, but as we've said, an angle can also be a description of a turn. So here's my little person here, holding her, I'm going to say, arms out in front of her like a, I don't know, ballerina, something like that. Now if you imagine that we're looking down at her, so her arms are in front of her, here is her head, and she's facing up towards the top of my screen. Now if she turns a quarter of the way, she would be facing, she would be facing this direction. She'd be facing the right edge of my screen. If she were to do another quarter turn, she would be facing the bottom of my screen. If she did another quarter turn, she would be facing the left edge of my screen. And if she did one more quarter turn, she'd be facing forward, having done a full turn. Okay? Now, this here, remember I talked about book edge corners, didn't I? A book edge corner, just here, like the ones you would find in a rectangle, whether that's a square or an oblong, you will see this angle here. This is called a right angle. Okay, and a right angle is 90 degrees. So we could say that this young woman turns 90 degrees, and that would tell me that she's turned a quarter of the way around. So suffice it to say, angles can be a part of a shape, a property of a shape, or they can be a way to describe how someone is turning. Okay, so let's have a look at this shape. It is an oblong, as we've already discussed. What is special about the angles on this shape, the internal angles, so the angles inside the shape? If you have a good look here, there's one here, little angle here. There are angles between any pair of edges that you come across. What is special about them? Well, hopefully you said that these are my little book edge corners. They are my right angles. They are 90 degrees. Okay? And right angles are very, very useful in mathematics and in lots of practical applications as well. It's a very strong angle, which is why you find it on things like tables and chairs quite a lot. Here is my right angle, and you can see the dotted line or the hashed line indicates where the right angle is, and it's where these 2 edges meet. This is a right angle here. And again, if I had a little person here and they were looking up and they turned so that they were looking that way, they would have turned 90 degrees, they would have turned in a right angle. Now, what I would like you to do, take a moment, find a pencil and something to write with and a piece of paper, and look around the room, look where you are. And I want you to tell me how many right angles, how many of those book edge corners, those 90-degree corners, you can find in 30 seconds. So pause the video here while you get yourself ready. Don't start looking for the right angles yet. I'll tell you when to do that. When you've set up with your writing implement and your pencil, then you can play the video again. Okay, so looking around the room, Starting now, 30 seconds. How many right angles can you see? Write down the names of all the objects that you can see right angles on. Five seconds remaining there. Okay. So let's see if you beat me then. I was sat in my living room and had a good look around. These are the right angles I spotted. Let's see if you spotted more than me. These aren't actually my things. These are representations of the things that I could see. So I could see some of my daughter's building blocks, and on each face of these 3D cubes you can see 4 right angles. I saw a textbook, non-fiction book, and that again had right angles on it. Over here I could see a TV. My TV has right angles in the corners, and windows which also have right angles. My daughter has a playmat, so that doesn't look like this. This is a baby's playmat. She's got a foam one, but hey ho, right angles there. I saw my rug, which has right angles, and a piece of paper on the side, which has right angles, in addition to a storage box. So I found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 objects with right angles. Let me know if you did better than me. So there are different types of angles. They're not all right angles. Some of them are smaller than a right angle. This angle is smaller than a right angle. If this were a right angle, instead of falling over and slanting like this edge here is, the edge would go straight up like that. Okay? And then the angle would be this size. Okay? This is smaller than that angle. This is an acute angle. Now for year 3, you don't need to know what an acute angle is. You simply need to be able to tell me if a given angle is smaller than a right angle or not. This is smaller than a right angle. Now this one is larger than a right angle. If this were a right angle, this edge here, BC edge, would go up. So my angle would only be this big, and instead it's much larger. This is called an obtuse angle, but again for year 3 you do not need to know that. You can simply tell me that it is larger or bigger than a right angle. So here we can see all the different angles together. So here we have on our flat line, we have my right angle here, which is formed with this green edge here, and you can see my little square proving that this is a right angle. Now my acute angle here is smaller than my right angle. My obtuse angle with this black arch here is larger than my right angle. So which one of these is a right angle? They are labelled, so it's fairly easy to see, but you can have a look at a square, and where the corner matches up with the angle, that is a right angle. If I tried to put my square here, you'd find that the angle was too big. If I tried to put my square here, you would find the angle too small. The angle would also be too big on a straight line. So this is my right angle over here. What I would like you to do is draw me some angles. I'd like you to draw me a right angle, an angle that is bigger than a right angle, and an angle that is smaller than a right angle. You can do that on the piece of paper in front of you. Have a go at that, and you can pause the video while you get that done. Okay, hopefully you've done your angle drawings now. I'd like you to tell me which one of these is larger than a right angle. One of them is a right angle, one of them is larger than a right angle, one of them is smaller than a right angle. Is it my first one, which we can call A, my second one, which we'll call B, or my third one, which we'll call C. I'll give you a moment. Hopefully, you've all identified. If you need a bit longer, just pause the video and you can resume it when you're ready. Hopefully, you've all identified that B is larger than the right angle. Now, we have gone through, and let's just revisit our composites here. We have learned how to identify our right angle, and they're 90 degrees. They look like the corner of a book. Okay, and if you were to get a book or any other rectangle, hold it up with your right angle. If it matches, that's a right angle. We should know that two right angles, here look, make half a turn. So if I turn, basically a right angle here is a quarter turn, isn't it? So 2 quarter turns, 2 right angles make a half turn, and 3 quarter turns, 3 right angles make a 3/4 turn. 4 of my quarter turns would take me 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'd go right the way around the circle. So that would be what we'd call a full turn. Okay. And hopefully you can now identify whether angles are greater than or less than a right angle.